Alright, today I'm comparing the Ibanez RGA21P1PB Premium and the Ibanez RG550 Genesis. This one is in Road Flare Red. I'm sorry if it looks kind of orange. It's just the lighting in this place is crazy. If you clicked on this video, you're wondering if the new RGA is worth it or if it's better to get the less expensive and made in Japan Genesis series guitar. I have done reviews of both of these guitars individually, so be sure to check them out if you want in-depth details on either one of these. But today we're going to talk about how these two compare. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by Ibanez or any brand shown or mentioned in this video. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about the playability and feel, and let's get this out of the way real quick. Both of these are fantastic playing instruments. They have the flat, fast playing Ibanez necks you've come to expect with the brand. The neck profiles and dimensions are slightly different. I'll talk about those next, but there's no complaints from me with either one of these guitars. So what is the difference? According to the website, Ibanez.com, at the first fret, the thickness of the neck is 17 millimeters, at the 12th fret, 19 millimeters, and it has a 430 millimeter fretboard radius. Whereas the Premium here, it's 18 millimeters, 20 millimeters, and 400 millimeters respectively. If you play these two guitars back to back, you will notice a difference. And depending on your personal preferences, you may prefer one or the other. So I can't truly say one is better than the other one. They're just slightly different. Emphasis on slightly. You'll also notice that the Premium here has more prestige coating. I'm not sure what it is, if it's a coating, a finish, if it's a waxing, but they apply something to the backs of the necks of typically prestige Ibanez guitars. And they do this to make it feel more played in. And this is more of it than this one. And I realize neither one of these are prestiges technically. But the RGA Premium, it has about as much as Ibanez Prestige new at about this price point or a little higher. And this one doesn't quite have as much. It doesn't have raw maple on the neck right here, but it has significantly less. Of course, if you play the guitar in some, this becomes negated. I've used this guitar on several songs and several videos. I've practiced with it, had fun with it, noodled with it. So the oil from my thumb has applied a quote-unquote coating or however it works. Moving on to the frets, the Premium has stainless steel frets. The Genesis has the typical nickel silver frets. I personally prefer stainless steel frets. I like the durability and the smoothness too, but I don't hate the nickel frets. They play just fine. In terms of the fretwork, both are pretty good too. There's no cutting of the fingers or palms or anything. No sharp edges. I'd say the fretwork on the Made in Japan guitar is ever so slightly better. Absolutely no complaints with either guitar. And I totally understand that the more expensive guitar is going to have stainless steel. When I wear these frets down on the Genesis, I will replace them with stainless steel frets. Again, just my personal preference. Overall, both necks and frets and fretwork on both of these guitars are good. I prefer the one on the Genesis for that ultra-fast Ibanez experience, but if I'm going to play a longer session, if I'm at all worried about hand fatigue in the slightest, if I'm just practicing around, if I'm going to be playing all day, I do prefer the neck on the Premium here. Maybe I'm getting old. I still like thin necks, but having just that little extra thickness does go a long way for me. Now, moving on past the neck to the joint, it is worth mentioning that on the Premium, it does have the all-axis neck joint, versus on the Genesis here, you have, I think, what's called the tilt joint. So there is kind of an angle here, but you do have that square shape. It's not the end of the world. It's not horrible. You can access the 24th fret just fine. But it is undeniable that on the all-axis neck joint, you can access the 24th fret so much easier. It is seamless, pretty much perfect. And it does take just a little bit of practice to be able to hit the 24th fret with the tilt joint here. Again, it's not the end of the world. It's not horrible, not unusable by any means. But you have to consider over time, through practice sessions, through trying to nail the take when recording, through playing live, little annoyances can add up. And so because of that, I do personally prefer the all-axis neck joint. But again, the Genesis here is far from unplayable. You can reach the 24th fret just fine. We're basically comparing really great fret access versus outstanding fret access. Now, moving on to the bodies of these guitars, obviously they do have different body shapes. You have the RGA here, which has the arch top, and then you have the RG, the Genesis, which has a flat top with the forearm contour right there. Both bodies are solid enough. Neither one is going to hinder your playing if it's the type of body you're looking for. If you're making the decision off of body shape alone between these two guitars, it really just does come down to if you like the arch top versus the flat top with the forearm contour, because they do feel a bit different against the forearm. And speaking of feel against the forearm, the finish is worth mentioning because the low gloss on the RGA, it does stick a little bit versus bare skin. So if that kind of thing hinders your playing, if it sticks against your skin or not, then you might want to pick the Genesis. If you're getting all sweaty during playing, then it won't matter as much. And then moving on to the bridges, you've got the Gibraltar Standard 3 versus the Edge. Both are pretty good. The Gibraltar 3 is different than the 2 in that near the height adjustment screws of the saddle is higher up versus the back part of the saddle. And if you're playing like palm muting closer to the string, you're not going to feel this at all. You're not going to notice it. I noticed it a bit when I first picked up this guitar, but after a minute of playing, I didn't notice it anymore, and I haven't noticed it since. It doesn't hinder your playing at all. The Edge bridge on the Genesis feels fantastic. It's kind of like a Floyd if you've never played an Ibanez Edge before. The bridge saddles don't have any higher or lower ends. It feels very comfortable to play. I do recognize that I'm comparing a fixed bridge to a floating bridge here, so that might not make sense, but again, we're comparing a new premium guitar versus the Genesis, because you might be considering either one of these. You might be considering the cheaper but made in Japan guitar if you're looking at the premium guitar. So maybe because one is significantly less expensive than the other, you might be willing to compromise if you're looking for a fixed bridge, but then you see there's this guitar, it has the floating bridge, but maybe you consider it. Maybe you'd make an exception because of the price difference. Now, talking about quality and stability, and by stability, I mostly mean tuning stability, but I'm also talking about the stability of the setup. I was fully expecting the Made in Japan guitar to blow away the competition, but I was impressed. I was seriously surprised with the RGA here. I was surprised because when you think of Made in Japan Ibanez, you think of the Prestige line, and those are absolutely fantastic guitars. And even though this Genesis series is made in Japan, it's not technically a Prestige guitar. However, if it said Prestige on the headstock, I would believe it. Not saying that I do want it to say Prestige on the headstock, I don't. I'd rather all Ibanez guitars just say Ibanez on them. But the Genesis here definitely punches above its price point in terms of quality. I've already talked about its playability. But of course, the Premium, it did surprise me, and I mentioned it in the review of this guitar too. This is the best made in Indonesia guitar I've ever played. And I do like guitars that are made in Indonesia, don't get me wrong, both Ibanez and otherwise. But this one in particular has been the most stable and solidly built. It's held its setup perfectly. Nothing feels loose or off. You would hope so at this price point. Both guitars are very stable. With the RGA, it is stable in terms of setup, but let's talk about the tuning stability. It's pretty good, except the major flaw with this guitar, the weird decision Ibanez made, is that it has a plastic nut. So naturally, the strings will bind if you do bends and stuff. I don't know why they used a plastic nut. The nut material is probably the cheapest way to improve the guitar. You could use a graphite nut or something similar, a Graphtec. Major miss there. I've intentionally left the nut as is. I haven't applied any lubrication or done any tricks. I wanted to see how bad it was. It was better than I thought it would be. You can record with this guitar, and I have. You can travel with this guitar, and I have. Be sure to check your tuning every once in a while. Make sure you're in tune. So it's not a worthless guitar. It's not the end of the world. But you do have to be mindful. And again, everything else about this guitar has been rock solid. The setup with this guitar has stuck. Now moving on to the Genesis, this guitar has been stable also. I did have a rocky start with it. Maybe it was taking longer to acclimate to the temperature, the humidity, the climate around here. I did have to set it up a few times to get it right. And I do recognize I'm not a professional luthier. I'm not a professional guitar tech. It's very possible it was a skill issue at first in setting up this guitar. But after a few tries, the setup did stick. I haven't had any problems since. And the tuning stability on this is excellent, as you'd expect from a high-quality floating tremolo bridge. I can confidently say that it is on par with the Prestige in that respect. Other notes on quality, the electronics, the wiring, no complaints there. They feel above average. The 5-way switches feel great. The Ultra switch on this guitar, it works perfectly fine. The wiring on this guitar is held up too. You'll notice that I did change the knobs of the potentiometers. I did that just for fun. There was no need to do that. The wiring on either of these guitars have not failed. I've used these in multiple videos. I've used them in a few songs. Spoiler alert for this music video coming out soon. No issues anywhere. Alright, so let's talk about the sound of both of these guitars. I can say the pickups are decent. They are going to get some hate online. The Fusion Edges and the Premium, for example, a lot of people hate them. I find they work pretty well for my uses in my mixes with my plugin presets. The V7, V8 are pretty decent too. Nothing wows me about the pickups here. They get the job done with both guitars. They're not horrible. They're not going to hold you back. They're also not going to blow your mind. While they're not incredible, there's nothing outrageously bad about either pickup set that make me want to replace them. For added context, I mostly use the bridge pickup, sometimes I use the neck pickup, and sometimes I use the position 4 setting for cleans. I am pretty fond of the clean tone I do get with the position 4 with both of these guitars. So when it comes to you, the guitarist, you might be able to feel or hear a difference between playing these two guitars, between listening to these two guitars. But to non-guitarists, maybe they'll struggle. They might not be able to immediately tell the difference, especially in a full mix. When you've got drums, other instruments, you've got all your EQ, your compressors, your mixing, your mastering. Between these two pickup sets, it isn't fully going to matter too much which one you pick. It's going to matter way more if you play your part accurately, if you play your guitar well, if you're in tune, etc. So in this video, I can show you how these two guitars sound relative to each other. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to demo that now. All right, so let's talk overall thoughts. Now, first of all, is the Genesis worth it? This is, of course, assuming you don't dislike floating trem bridges, because, of course, if you do, then this would be a non-starter. But again, if you're considering the RGA Premium that has a fixed bridge and you're looking for an alternative, this is made in Japan quality, basically has the same dimensions as a Prestige neck, and is significantly less expensive. It is a much better value. It's also assuming you don't dislike the colors these come in, because they do come in more crazy neon 80s colors. This Road Flare red, it might not fully be captured accurately on camera, but it is a super bright red-orange, especially under sun. It definitely makes a statement. It's definitely seen. But because this guitar is also much less expensive, you have money for other things. Maybe you want to replace the pickups. Maybe you need to buy cables. Maybe you want to buy a DAW, some other software, some pedals, some plugins. You will have money left over. But one thing that can hold it back is that it doesn't have the all-access neck joint. Again, this neck joint here isn't terrible. You can see I can hit the 24th fret just fine when I'm holding it up here. But this is going to be your instrument that you're going to use. You're going to use it for countless takes when recording. You're going to use it for countless band practices, for countless jam sessions, for practice sessions. If you're trying to reach up here and you don't like this neck heel shape, you're going to end up resenting the guitar. It doesn't matter how good it is. You could argue too, if you're a fan of more modern features like stainless steel frets, they've reached this price point by cutting corners. Of course, if it doesn't matter to you, if it doesn't have super high-end name brand pickups, if it doesn't matter to you, if it doesn't have stainless steel frets, if it doesn't matter if it has this square, this tilt joint here or not, then why pay extra for things you don't care about? This is a great deal. Now, is the Premium worth it? The RGA here, and it's hard to say yes immediately. I do have to admit I am biased. I have wanted an RGA fixed bridge since forever. It is true that it's the best made in Indonesia guitar that I've ever played. It's a pretty great guitar. It plays extremely well. The construction is very solid. The neck is top quality. It has 99% of all the features I want. Again, super big miss with the nut here, the plastic nut. That is unfortunate. And I don't mind the look. I do like the look of this. To guitarists, this looks like a fake neck through because of course it is a bolt on here. So other guitarists might dislike it. To non-guitarists, it is just kind of an interesting racing stripe kind of thing. But even though this has most of all the features I like, I do love the playability, I love the arch top, all that. You can't deny that the Genesis exists, and it is hundreds of dollars cheaper. Maybe that offsets this guitar being more playable, arguably, because again, it has the all-access neck joint, it has this sculpted lower horn here. We're comparing really great fret access versus outstanding fret access. You're never going to have difficulty playing up here. Now, which one would I pick? And I do have to preface this with, these are both of my guitars, I'd pick both of them. Picking one of these is difficult. I do like how both of these look. So the color scheme, the top woods, all that, it doesn't matter in my decision. It's going to come down to the value of the guitar versus the playability, if having the all-access neck joint is worth it. And I would pick the RGA for playability. In recording guitar, doing take after take, it's going to get really irritating if I'm trying to play up here and there's just that little bit of square tilt joint neck heel. But I would pick the Genesis for that value. You can't deny that this guitar is far less expensive and you are getting the made in Japan quality you would expect from Ibanez. This guitar gets the job done. As a bonus, it's visible in dark places, so in dark stages, in dark video setups. And I realize this is the least committal I've been in any comparison video I've done. This is the hardest choice I've had to make so far. I'm comparing a guitar I've always wanted versus a guitar with undeniable value. So if you force my hand, I would pick the RGA because it has the stainless steel frets, because it is the arch top I've always wanted. The playability is there perfectly. However, I also recognize that the Genesis guitar is fantastic value, and again, it plays phenomenally too. So overall, my heart says RGA and my head says RG Genesis. Therefore, I'd recommend the Genesis. But what do you think? Would you give the new RGA a shot, or is the RG Genesis just too good of a value to pass up? Be sure to comment your thoughts down below. If you have any other questions, comment them down too. Of course, this is YouTube, so I have to say the YouTube things. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. Check out the socials, join the Discord. If you're looking for something cool to listen to, I'm on all major streaming services too. I do video game metal covers, and I also do some originals too. And as always, peace.